Hello, everybody. So today's video is meeting the enemy, which is a speech on TedX by Cassie Jaye. She's a women's rights activist that she decided to make a documentary about women's rights activists to see the other side of the story. Let's watch this together.
In 2013, I decided to meet my enemies. I was a 27-year-old award-winning documentary filmmaker and a proud feminist, and I was determined to expose the dark underbelly of the men's rights movement. At that point, all I knew of the men's rights movement was from what I read online, that it's a misogynistic hate group actively working against women's equality. While the vast majority of my previous work was about women's issues. I directed documentaries about reproductive rights, single motherhood, and the need for more girls to get into STEM education.
So this begs the question, what is the word which is the reverse of misogyny? Is it being a feminist or what?
So when I learned that no one had ever documented the men's rights movement in a film before,
Nobody
I saw it
cares.
as an opportunity to continue fighting for women's equality by exposing those preventing it. So for 1 year, I traveled North America, meeting the leaders and followers of the men's rights movement. I spent anywhere from 2 hours up to 8 hours interviewing each individual men's rights activist, also known as MRA. And I filmed 44 people total. And there's an important rule in documentary filmmaking. As an interviewer, you do not interrupt. So I'm asking questions, and I'm getting their full life story. And in the moment, I didn't realize it. But now looking back, I can see that while I was conducting my interviews,
We're prejudiced.
I wasn't actually listening.
Oh, you're not listening.
I was hearing them speak, and I knew the cameras were recording. But in those moments of sitting across from my enemy, I wasn't listening. What was I doing? I was anticipating. I was waiting to hear a sentence or even just a couple of words in succession that proved what I wanted to believe, that I had found the misogynist, the ground zero of the war on women. A couple of times I thought I had it. There was one men's rights activist that said to me, "Just walk outside and look around. Everything you see was built by a man." Ooh, his statement felt anti-women. I felt my jaw clench, but I sat quietly, as a documentarian should, while removing all the space between my upper and lower molars. After my year of filming, I was reviewing the 100 hours of footage I had gathered, replaying and
That's a lot.
transcribing it, which, believe me when I say, no one will ever listen to you more than someone who transcribes your words. You should write that down.
Maybe I will. I should.
So I was typing out every word meticulously, and through that process, I began to realize that my initial knee-jerk reactions to certain statements weren't really warranted, and my feeling offended didn't hold up to intense scrutiny. Was that statement about men having built the skyscrapers and the bridges anti-women? I thought, well, what would be the gender reverse scenario? Maybe a feminist saying, "Just look around. Everyone you see was birthed by a woman."
Or being raised up by a woman.
That's a powerful statement. And it's true. Is it anti-male?
Nurtured
I
by
don't
women.
think so. I think it's acknowledging our unique and valued contributions to our society.
Which what we call gender roles.
Well, luckily, while I was making the Red Pill movie, I kept a video diary, which ended up tracking my evolving views. And in looking back on the 37 diaries I recorded that year, there was a common theme. I would often hear an innocent and valid point that a men's rights activist would make, But in my head, I would add on to their statement a sexist or anti-woman spin, assuming that's what they wanted to say but didn't. So here are two examples of how that would go. A men's rights activist in MRA would say to me, there are over 2,000 domestic violence shelters for women in the United States, but only one for men. Yet multiple reputable studies show that men are just as likely to be abused. I would hear them say, we don't need 2,000 shelters for women. They're all lying about being abused. It's all a scam. But in looking back on all the footage I'd gathered of men's rights activists talking about shelters, and all the blogs they've written, and the video live streams they posted on YouTube, they're not trying to defund women's shelters.
Trying to get their own.
All they're saying is that men can be abused too, and they deserve care and compassion. Second example, a men's rights activist would say to me, where is justice for the man who was falsely accused of raping a woman?
That's
And
big.
because of this accusation, he loses his college scholarship and is branded with the inescapable title of rapist.
I heard very bad stories about this, like a guy who was sentenced for like 5 years in prison because of rape, and then he lost his kids, and he had to pay everything, and in the end he was innocent, and the woman did not even go to jail afterwards. She is still on trial till now.
I would hear them say, a woman being raped isn't a big deal. It's as if I didn't hear the word falsely accused of rape. All I heard was he was accused of rape. Of course, rape is a big deal, and all the men's rights activists I met agreed it is a horrible thing to have happened to anyone. I eventually realized what they're saying is they're trying to add to the gender equality discussion who is standing up for the good-hearted, honorable man that loses his scholarship, his job, or worse yet, his children, because he's accused of something he absolutely did not do. Well, I couldn't keep denying the points they were making. There are real issues. But in my effort to avoid agreeing with my enemy completely,
Yeah.
I changed from putting words in their mouth to acknowledging the issue, but insisting they are women's issues. So here are two examples of how that would go. A men's rights activist would say to me, men are far more likely to lose their child in a custody battle. And I would counter, well, because women are unfairly expected to be the caretaker, it's discrimination against women that women get custody more often.
That's wild.
I'm not proud of that. Second example, an MRA would say to me, men are roughly 78% of all suicides throughout the world. And I would counter with, but women attempt suicide more often.
But the problem with that, nobody cares about what man says. Like, he has to hold it in for himself. He will no longer be a man if he speaks up about what are his issues. That's why that's the way it is perceived by society. So in the end, a man only solution in a struggle, at least in some people's view, that he has to suicide, which is crazy.
So
It's not a
it's
competition.
not a contest, but I kept making it into one. Why couldn't I simply learn about men's issues and have compassion for male victims
Without bias.
without jumping at the opportunity to insist that women are the real victims? Well, after years of researching and fact-checking what the men's rights activists were telling me, there is no denying that there are many human rights issues that uniquely or disproportionately affect men. Paternity fraud uniquely affects men. The United States Selective Service, in the case of a draft, still uniquely affects men. Workplace deaths, disproportionately men. War deaths, overwhelmingly men. Suicide, overwhelmingly men. Sentencing disparity, life expectancy, child custody, child support, false rape allegations, criminal court bias, misandry, failure to launch, boys falling behind in education,
That's so many.
homelessness, veterans issues, infant male genital mutilation, lack of parental choice once a child is conceived, lack of resources for male victims of domestic violence. So many issues that are heartbreaking if you are the victim or you love someone who is the victim of any one of these issues. These are men's issues, and most people can't name one because they think, well, men have all the rights, they have all the power and privilege.
We do.
But these issues deserve to be acknowledged. They deserve care, attention, and motivation for solutions. Before making the Red Pill movie, I was a feminist of about 10 years, and I thought I was well-versed on gender equality issues. But it wasn't until I met men's rights activists that I finally started to consider the other side of the gender equality equation. Doesn't mean I agreed with all that they said, but I saw the immense value in listening to them and trying to see the world through their eyes. I thought if I could get my audience to also listen to them, it could serve as a rung on the ladder, bringing us all up to a higher consciousness about gender equality. So in October 2016, the film was released in theaters, and articles and critic reviews started to roll in. And that's when I experienced how engaged the media is in groupthink around gender politics. And I learned a difficult lesson. When you start to humanize your enemy, you, in turn, may be dehumanized by your community. And that's
He is the enemy.
rather than debating the merit of the issues addressed in the film, I became the target of a smear campaign. And people who had never seen the movie protested outside the theater doors, chanting that it was harmful to women. It certainly is not. But I understand their mindset. If I never made this movie and I heard that there was a documentary screening about men's rights activists that didn't show them as monsters, I too would have protested the screenings or at least signed the petitions to ban the film because I was told that they were my enemy. I was told that men's rights activists were against women.
So she says a key word, I was told, but who portrayed them as the enemy? It is the media. It is people who are taking the leadership role in the movement, the feminist movement in general. They are the one who decide who's the enemy and who's not. So when they depict man as the enemy, everybody listens because everybody else don't know why the man should be the enemy in the feminist movement. Why men has to be misogynist if they are saying there is nothing called equality. It's basically called gender roles. Everybody has to strive for better society rather than we need to be equal, because there is nothing called true equality. There are jobs that are done by men which will never be done by women, right? Everybody knows that. The subway, for example, the people who built the subways, the people who did the digging, the people who coal mining, you can say building the infrastructure, building skyscraper, bricklayers, whatever you want to name it. There is so many jobs that are solely done by men and can't be done by women, or if it need to be filled by women, it will be very minor percentage. So there is nothing called true equality, right? It is just gender roles. We as a society, everybody needs to know their role, right? And based on that, the society will survive. Like, imagine you are in a ship, the society is the ship. There can be only one captain, right? Not everybody can be a captain, if there is a captain already. Like, there is the navigator, like there is the people who are doing the hard labor. So everybody needs to know their role and function together. If somebody neglects their role, it will affect the entire society. Like, the ship might not go to the place if the navigator does not know his role and he decides, no, I need to do this. Why I'm the navigator? Why it's not this guy is the navigator? And then this fight starts, and the ship will not go anywhere. So everybody needs to know their place in the society.
Equality. But all the men's rights activists I met support women's rights.
At all costs.
Asking the question, why doesn't our society care about men's rights?
Because they are men.
Well, the greatest challenge I faced through this whole process, it wasn't the protests against my film, and it wasn't how I was treated by the mainstream media, even though it got pretty disgusting at times. The greatest challenge I faced was peeling back the layers of my own bias. It turns out I did meet my enemy while filming. It was my ego saying that I was right and they were subhuman. It's no secret now that I no longer call myself a feminist, but I must clarify, I am not anti-feminist, and I am not a men's rights activist. I still support women's rights, and I now care about men's rights as well. However, I believe if we want to honestly discuss gender equality, we need to invite all voices to the table. Yet this is not what is happening. Men's groups are continually vilified, falsely referred to as hate groups, and their voices are systematically silenced. Do I think either movement has all the answers? No. Men's rights activists are not without flaws, and neither are feminists. But if one group is being silenced, that's a problem for all of us. If I could give advice to anyone in our society at large, we have to stop expecting to be offended, and we have to start truly, openly, and sincerely listening. That will lead to a greater understanding of ourselves and others, having compassion for one another, working together towards solutions because we all are in this together. And once we do that, we can finally heal from the inside out. But it has to start with listening. Thank you for listening.
Nice speech, honestly. Really nice speech. So, if I want to put an analogy for the things that's happening between feminists and men rights activists, like men are on a cliff and women are on the other cliff. There is big space between us and we need to build a bridge, right? So women and men can share the resources and survive. What's happening is men are trying to build the bridge, and feminists on the other side, not all women, just feminists on the other side say, why are you helping them? They need to build the bridge so we can cross. But you're saying that equality, the resources are on the other side. If they build the bridge on their own, it will not be stable. You need to share the resources from the other side. Everybody needs to know their roles. No, let them build the bridge alone. So that is what's happening, is like it's their job, they have to do it. We just need to watch, and that is what is our role is. And that is equality is. We need to take everything, but they need to do the hard work, and that's how we survive. I think that is my analogy. I'm not sure you will agree. Let's see what you have to say about this. Until the next video, see you guys.